What is up, everybody? My name's Lewis, also known as MrCameraJunkie, where I remind you to upgrade your skills before your gear. Welcome back, crew members, to yet another live stream, week number 48, if I am correct. And happy Halloween for those who are celebrating it tomorrow or basically within the hour. You know, there's a lot of people out in parties, so if you're here hanging out with me, welcome to Club Camera Junkie, where we talk about cameras, live streaming, YouTube, so on and so forth. Um, let's see who's in the chat. As always, to get things started. All right off the bat, we have Randy in the house saying, "Hello, Lewis from Arizona. My parents are doing great. Mom is being released on Monday to go back home. I've been watching from afar, but still following when I can." Super glad to hear that good information, Randall. Thank you for stopping by. I sent Randall a message during the week, just letting him know that my thoughts and prayers were with him and his family. But I'm glad to get the good news here. So glad to have you stopping by. Rob is in the house saying Nikon rocks. Okay. Just making sure that I'm coming through. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that the audio was coming through correctly. Let me take this out. I think it's going to make it easier for me. All right. But guess what? Nikon does rock. And before we start speaking anything, and I'm going to get to this, I do want to do one thing, which is I would like to give my slow clap applause to Nikon for actually doing the one thing above all the specs, doing the one thing that I said that they needed to do to carry on the legacy and to actually move forward in this new, space when it comes to cameras, which was their autofocus. And it actually looks like plenty of us, got the word through to them to let them know that above all specs when it comes to 30-minute recording, all the things that people could complain about, if you do not have good autofocus, then you're ages behind. And it looks like they've caught up to what we're dealing with now. There still seems to be some tweaks that need to be taken care of, but I don't see that Nikon won't be taking care of that as far as firmware, even though all the information that we do have is from pre-production models. So with that being said, big ups to Nikon for actually doing what they needed to do to stay in this space, to stay in the game. So above all the specs that we will be talking about, big ups to Nikon and the Z9 for fixing the autofocus. You understand? Says, good thing Doc didn't hear you say that about Nikon rocks. It says, think you decide. It's the same thing, but yeah, actually, like I don't have a problem with Nikon. I really do like Nikon as well. Like all jokes aside, being called the potato, so on and so forth. The biggest thing is that Nikon was never the biggest when it comes to video. They were always great for photography stills and the files straight out of camera, and also they're very easy to deal with in post. So I've never had an issue with Nikon except, their inactiveness or like ineptitude when it comes to the autofocus and the new type of autofocus with mirrorless cameras. That's basically was their one, downfall that I said above all else. And it was one of the live streams that I had here that I think that I was talking about either this camera or their prior. We were talking about Nikon cameras on the stream, and I literally just finished it all off with, if Nikon fixes their autofocus, they'll be back in it. There's too many Nikon shooters out there that were literally waiting for this day, waiting for the day that they can say, okay, this is where I can invest my money and have the familiarity of Nikon cameras, the flexibility of Nikon files, especially Nikon raw files, and then to have a camera that has autofocus adequate enough to the point where you don't have to worry about, your focus. One of the major things that brought photography to the forefront back in the 80s was autofocus, and having reliable autofocus. Now to have that, and the latest generations with the mirrorless cameras, eye autofocus, bird, animal, so on and so forth, that was their limiting factor. So once again, big up to Nikon. Super glad that they're back in the game. Sammy Superstars in the house saying hello. And Paul is saying hi there. Rob says, Doc knows my love for Nikon. Yeah, but it's the funny thing. I think Lemuel now has something to fall back on, and literally say like, oh, I don't have to get the Sonys. Hey, Gil's in the house saying, hey, as a Nikon shooter, I'm excited for this camera and to see its features trickle down to the newer, more affordable options. That's always the benefit, right? Like when people start talking about these camera wars and so on and so forth, like I remember when Canon not too long ago dropped the R5 and they were talking about 8K and all this and blah 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 blah, which is great. The R5, the R6, they're great cameras. As soon as they dropped them out, I just cracked a smile. I'm like, that only helps out Sony shooters, right? Because we'll see what iteration Sony will come out with, just kind of like leapfrogging. So when all of these companies start competing to leapfrog, whenever somebody else comes out with something new, it should get you excited for your company to see like what is the path, or what's the path that's being blazed as far as the innovations with these cameras. But I am going to touch on something else that I've also mentioned before, of what exactly a megapixel is, because there was an article that came out on Sony Alpha Rumors, which is pretty intriguing, but it really does coincide with what I was trying to explain in a previous live stream. So we'll go to that. We'll just continue here in the chat, see who else is here. Dr. Elo saying, Wepa, how are you doing, sir? Kevin Cox is in the house saying hello to everyone. And Paul is making sure that everyone knows that Kevin is in the building. Matt Granger shot 1,800 clicks on the buffer and would handle at least the file size of compressed RAW. Actually, I believe he was shooting full RAW. I saw the video. And it was 1,869 files. 1,869 files before the buffer started slowing down, which is ridiculous. But it goes to show you the technology and how fast that is pretty much an unlimited buffer. I had put it into my notes to bring that up, but now that you mention it, that's just amazing. That is. Do you know what it is even to have a camera that can shoot 1,800 shots? Because I always go back to, like the film cameras that I have on my shelf up there. We were limited to 36 exposures. That was pretty much max that you can hold in a roll of film. And now a memory card can give you 4,000, 5,000 exposures. And not just standard film, but you're talking about 45 megapixel files, which is roughly like around 8 times what the resolution that you would get from traditional film, in something of that, in that ballpark. Being shot at 20 frames a second, and within a couple of minutes you can shoot close to 2,000 images, and all of that is in a package that you can carry. I just go back to it because those were the days of the film where you would have your 2 cameras and then you would have an entire book bag full of film so that you can shoot an event. It's just crazy. The levels of technology and the way that they have advanced, these cameras are something else. And I'll tell you the truth, Nikon really put a good foot forward with this camera. We've been talking about it for a long time that they needed to do this. I'm glad that they did. Says uncompressed RAW is 20 frames per second. Exactly. Which is This camera has the ability to shoot 120 frames per second. Now, it is a like 17 megapixel, which is still more than adequate because you can shoot pretty much anything with 12 megapixels. So anything above that, already reaching like even iPhone that shoots at 13 megapixels, is more than enough resolution that you need to get high quality images, especially when you're talking about JPEGs straight out of camera. So 17 megapixels at 120 frames a second with a like practically limitless buffer on a camera like this is gonna revolutionize what we consider sports photography or wildlife photography, because of the fact that they're gonna have the ability to shoot so many files. And when it comes to like more journalistic photography, like when we say sports and wildlife, there's not a lot of post editing that needs to be done. It's not like when you're shooting portraits of someone that you need to get rid of blemishes and need to start making sure that the skin tones are correct and that the colors pop correctly and that you actually get the correct skin tones so that the individuals that you're shooting actually look like themselves. None of that is really has to be catered to when it comes to, you know, sports or wildlife. The colors are more subjective in those aspects. That's why when you see shots from like the sidelines in a, you know, like in a report either on ESPN or something, and you're seeing the guy, you know, scoring the touchdown, they're usually like really over contrasted and really oversaturated in colors. This has been the kind of like the latest trend when it comes to the photography that comes out of, you know, like the sports world. As far as stills photography, it's like very over dramatized in every image, and all of these is because they're just cranking up like saturation levels and contrast on JPEGs because they're shooting so many and they need to pump them out so fast. They need to get them off of the sidelines, out of their cameras, and then straight out to like the presses, which is why this Nikon really does impress me with like it from what I'm seeing so far. And I haven't been able to really look as deep as I wanted into this camera. I haven't seen anything that it's not capable of doing. And for those of you who have been here before, you also know that I'm not a big fan of flip out fully articulating screens. So the fact that it still has a more traditional photography type of LCD in the back, that it keeps it centered with the body itself and gives you the ability of going like, you know, kind of like vertical, very low. That's one of the biggest features that they've been doing, because I think they're really trying to shoot into like the landscape photographers as well, to just have like a variety of different vertical forms of, you know, shooting photography. That also helps a lot when it comes to portraits, and nowadays I'm just guessing that it's going to help a lot with the vertical video, because I don't see why, if in the Z50 they have the vertical video format, meaning that if you were to flip your camera to the side into the vertical position and hit record on video, it will format it like that, like the phone, comparative to having to do that in post like most of us still have to do with our current mirrorless or DSLR cameras. So that is like Gil was saying, having the technology trickle down through the less expensive cameras, you know. And just as like a key feature, you know, just throwing this in there as well, that's what we're hoping to actually work in reverse with the new features that are coming out, or that have come out with the new Sony Alpha 4, Alpha 7.4, right? Yeah, A7.4. With that one, the new updates when it comes to like the focus modes, the focus breathing compensation, all of the like firmware or software updates that are applied into that camera should be trickling up to their higher end cameras like the A9 or A9 II, the A7S III, and the Alpha 1. So fingers crossed on that, because that's one of like the software aspect is what really has me contemplating the A7 IV. But I digress. We're talking Nikon today. All right, Kevin says, everyone remember to hit that like button on the way in. It's highly appreciated. And thank you, Kevin, as always, for even reminding me, because I get caught up talking about these things and I forget to mention it. But if you are here and you're having fun, remember to hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do that and be part of the Camera Junkie crew. We're getting very close to 1,000 subscribers here. So if you want to be part of the festivities and the fun, make sure that you make yourself known and say hi to everyone here in chat so that they can give you the Camera Junkie welcome. All right. My dad will be 98 years young this on Halloween. Wow. That is amazing. That's really cool, man. But once again, Randall, I'm glad that things are working out, and I'm glad that you're able to hang out here with us as always. Charles is in the house saying happy Saturday night. It is a happy Saturday night, right? As you can see, I changed up the theme a little bit. We went a little bit more, like dark mode with some red going on, kind of trying to give it a Halloween theme. Not really so much because I haven't had the time this month. This has been a crazy month. Some of you know all of the things that have happened in this month, but not to get into it. So many things. I'm still dealing with parts of the passing of my brother as well, and like tomorrow we're gonna be trying to recover like all of his possessions. So we're still in the mix of all that stuff, and Halloween is just another day on the calendar this year. So, but if you are celebrating, I will tell you to have fun, be safe, because mentioning it now, but I'll mention it later, that we do this every week. Every Saturday we come out and we have fun here at Club Camera Junkie. So make sure that you guys take care of yourselves so that we can do it all over again next week. So let's continue. All right, and we also have Tech for Your Needs is in the house. Nano, what's up, man? How are you doing? Everything sounds good here. Okay, so that's when I was checking my microphone. It says, LOL, right? Clap for Nikon. Yeah, exactly. That was my slow clap moment. You have to, because the one thing that Nikon, really, they were trying to catch up on so many specs, and they're like, oh, the Z7 II does this and that, and then they're like, yeah, but you're still fighting the autofocus. And I don't know if for those of you who follow, certain different content creators, I also follow Tyler Jackson. He's a Canadian wedding photographer who shoots Nikon, and when he got his hand on the Z series, the Z7, Z6, Mark 1 and 2, on both of those, he was saying to himself, he's like, yeah, I have to revert almost to focus and recompose. For those of you who've never heard of this, it's back when we used to be using film cameras. There were no focus points. There was one focus point, whatever your eye or your hand could deal with as far as it went. So the center being the only autofocus point that you would have on a film camera, what you would do is that you would highlight that square over said individual's eye. Because when it comes to portrait photography, the eye is the most important thing that you want to nail sharpness on. Everything else could have fall off, either forward or backwards. Either way, when you would focus and recompose, you don't want every shot in in your portfolio or in your event, let's say it being a wedding, that every person that's in focus is exactly dead center of the frame. Because if the spot was only here, that means only the people in every single shot after shot after shot after shot of an event, that would be the only thing that's in focus. Then it gets boring very quick. So what you would do was that, let's say this was the focus spot, you would actually put the said individual in the middle of that spot. You would focus on their eye, and once you would have it, I'm gonna do it with my body to give you an illustration, but you would then turn the camera once you had acquired focus, and you would recompose, and you would adjust it, and then put said individual in the rule of thirds, and then snap the shot. You would first have to acquire the focus with the center point because it was the only one that you had, and once you had focus, you would recompose to then get a better varied shot within your portfolio or within the assortment of photography that you did in said event. That is pretty much in a nutshell what we call focus and recomposing. It was how photography was done back in the day. And with that being said, that's basically what you had to resort to using with the Z6 and the Z7, especially the Mark 1s, because the autofocus was so bad. That's basically what it comes down to. It was like, in a nutshell, the mirrorless offerings from Nikon prior to this point, it was like you were getting a mirrorless camera with film photography autofocus. So even their DSLR cameras, autofocus was far beyond what they were able to accomplish with their mirrorless line until now. And that's why we got the slow clap for them. That's why we're doing the stream and we're hanging out, because they actually, let's give people the flowers while they're still around. Let's actually let Nikon know, hey, you know what? You kind of didn't go the way of Olympus or anything like that. You're still in the game, and we appreciate it. Randall says, Louis, how do you like the tilting LCD? Oh, you know me, I'm team flip up. I really like the system. I haven't seen it to its full capacity, but I did see that you can go full 90 on the side. I don't know if you can go full 90, like to the left, which I doubt. But regardless, that should be more than enough as far as articulation for what you're going to do with that camera. That's it. Like, as far as photography goes, this, I think, is pretty much putting a lot of people in check and kind of becoming the standard when it comes to sports and video photography. Sports and wildlife photography. Let's say that. In the video, we'll still have to see, because autofocus for video is also completely different. We are speculating as far as pre-production model. That's the only thing that's even hit the waves right now, but it looks like Nikon, seriously, they're putting their best foot forward. So it's not time to knock on them right now or anything like that. Now it's time to actually say, job well done, good job on you, and let's hope to see a plethora of new cameras with these new processors that is allowing the better functionality of these cameras, and let's see how that moves on into the future. Hydrate. Oh, John's in the house says, I agree. When I was doing more photos than video, I bought the Nikon D610. I'm using my Canon EOS R and Sony ZV-1. The Nikon has a good home with my daughter who's studying art. It's so true. Like, a lot of you might have heard me say this before. The Nikon 90D, or is the D90. I always flip them around when it comes to that. So yeah, 90D is Canon. The Nikon D90 is still one of my favorite ergonomically made cameras. And it could be different for everyone, right? But for my hand, it felt like, when they say like a glove, that camera just fit in my hand like a glove. I was always really happy with it. 12 megapixels. The one downfall, to it, and I try to deal with it now, even going back to those older files, is that they were shooting 8-bit RAW. 8-bit for video is okay. 8-bit for photos is a little tough. And, Doc Rock was mentioning this on, I think it was in either his live stream or in the class today. But it's such a good way of thinking about it, because he was talking about crayons. And back in the day, there used to be packages of crayons that used to either come in 8, 16, 32, 64, or 128. And these were the quality or the quantity of crayons that you would get in the box. And the 128 had the little sharpener and everything like that. And it hit me today in class. I'm like, that is exactly how you can kind of demonstrate what bits are when it comes to cameras or the files. An 8-bit file is like you're coloring the entire picture, no matter how many megapixels, right? The amount of colors that you have is only that 8-pack of crayons. Okay, there's only a certain amount of color combinations that you could even create with the limitation of those 8 colors. But if you were to double it, right? 16 is way more than doubling just amount of physical colors. The possibilities of color combinations adding an entirely new set like increases the color depth exponentially. So, even before you start getting into 32s and things like that, if you're only dealing with 8 bits or 8 crayons, you can't accomplish the same thing that you could accomplish with 16 crayons when it comes to coloring. And that's where the bit depth and raw photos really, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. When you're talking about how good the Nikon files are, they are good. Even though they're 8-bit, they're easy to work with. The 14-bit and 16-bit files are just phenomenal when it comes to Nikon. That's why we'll be seeing exactly what type of raw files we're getting out of these cameras. Let's hope for 16-bit out of these, 20 frames per second on the Z9, and Nikon is gonna have a beast of a camera on their hands. And then talking into price, the fact that they were able to just like nudge it in like $1,000 under the Alpha One and like 500 under the Canon, it's a good look for Nikon right now. Sly is in the house saying hello from Texas. Kali is here saying, I got the scene set up. Thank you. Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Just before the live stream, I was on a Zoom call with Kali here, trying to get her set up. She has an important type of live stream that she's going to be doing all next week. And tomorrow I'm just super busy that I didn't have the time. So thank you for stopping by and letting me know that you were able to get the things going, even with the Stream Deck. Mario Crespi is in the house saying hello to me and friends. How are you doing, sir? Welcome as always. Saying good evening, good people. And Kevin saying hi to everyone here. Sly, how was the wedding? A wedding. I wasn't aware of it. I see so much stuff is going on. But if you could answer, how was the wedding? I spent way too much time with some of you today. Look, you got me laughing, Paul. Listen, there's days, right? Like, especially Saturdays. And I've mentioned this as well before. Like, Saturdays, I wake up. And today, my Saturday was thrown off. And I'm going to tell you why. Because Mr. Nick Nimmin did not have his live stream today. So, Nick not having his live stream was like, it just threw kind of like a monkey wrench into my Saturday. Because it's part of my routine. That I wake up, have my coffee, spend my first 3 hours as I'm organizing and working, taking care of Aiden, listening to Nick Nimmin do his live stream. Then, sometimes he runs it for 4 hours instead of 3. So, instead of closing at like noon, he'll close closer to 1 o'clock, which then starts the Video Influencers podcast recording for about an hour. Then at 2 o'clock, Doc Rock does his live stream, and that usually goes on for a couple of hours. So then it's 4 o'clock when Doc quits to then actually take a break before he starts his Zoom class, which starts at 5 o'clock. That usually runs for 2 hours. Today it ran for 3. And then after 8 o'clock, 8:15-ish, so when we finished the class was when I was able to hop onto another Zoom call with Kali to help her out to finalize that. To just basically close out, to make sure that Aiden's taken care of. He fell asleep, so he's there and not causing any trouble. To then jump on this live stream and have fun now, and hang out. So, definitely throughout this entire day, if Paul were to hang out with me in Nick Niman's live streams on Saturday morning, it would literally be like an all-day event. All right, so Kali's saying hi to Kevin and to Paul. Okay, so we're all just saying hi. It says, interesting. I wasn't a fan of the floppy screen either, then started vlogging. LOL. Well, this is the whole thing. For those of you who have been here, you know, Camera Junkie crew, you all know that I'm team flip up. So I do like a flip up screen, or a screen that allows you to see yourself. But I also feel that the flip up screen that they gave us on the APS-C line of the Sony cameras is a better technology than the flip out screen. I've never had an issue with it. It works like a fully articulating photography screen, and when I do need to vlog, if I want to, I have it that it's available to me. And then people would say, oh, the one main complaint is that the microphone blocks the camera, which is honestly a $15 fix. You could either get a cage, or you can get something like this. Right now I'm using the cage. And this is just a little side adapter. You see the screw there at the bottom? That just hooks onto the side plate where you would actually put like a lanyard or your actual neck strap to the camera, and it gives you a cold shoe off to the side that allows you to put the microphone offset from said flip up LCD. And now the microphone that would have been a problem is no longer a problem. I always say the reason why everyone or Sony caved into the flip out LCD is because there were so many Canon users that were clamoring for the heartfelt love that they have for an old technology in the flip out screen, because it's not new, you know, it's pretty old. Like well over 20 years old. So you're talking about that, and you have a company like Sony that's already improved upon that design, and people just kept clamoring for the nostalgia of a flip out LCD, and they kind of caved. They were like, look, if that's what's gonna take for you to buy my camera comparative to the competitor, then I'll give you the flip out LCD. But with that being said, Sony, Canon, Panasonic, any company that has a camera with a flip out screen has had them been returned because of damage. So many content creators I've seen. I remember Matty Hapoya put his EOS R in his front seat and hit go on his Tesla, and the LCD hit the back of the chair. Done LCD. Had to ship the camera back. Peter Lindgren puts his camera on a go-kart, not a go-kart, on an RC car, rolls it around. Now the LCD's jiggling, sending it back to Sony to get fixed. A friend of ours here from the Peter Gregg live streams, Shane, geeky nerdy techie, he has the Panasonic G5, had a flip out screen, was on a tripod. Here comes a gust of wind that knocks his camera down. Boom, done LCD on the new Panasonic GH5 II, I believe, or GH6 II. Can't remember exactly which one it was. It was the latest model, even to the point that the LCD that broke wasn't even in stock, so he had to wait even longer to get it repaired. So many horror stories of the LCD flip outs being broken, damaged, so much, and yet you don't hear these stories with the Sony flip up screens because it's a better design. You know, I've dropped my camera with the flip up LCD fully extended, and because it's metal and the design, it's not vulnerable to take damage like other cameras do. If it was a flip out LCD like I have on my Nikon up there, it would have been donezo, because you're putting too much stress on that joint, and this is an actual bracket that is the size of the LCD itself, holding it nice and tight together to the body, not putting it all on a hinge that's also articulating. It's an archaic design. I go back to it. Hashtag Team Flip Up. I think it's a better design, and there's a way to implement that into a full screen camera which I actually have thought of, you know, because the way that I see it in my mind, right, is that you can actually have a flip forward, screen that articulates if you were to put it on a metal bracket instead of having it as a fully articulating screen. So similar to what Nikon just did with their Z9 and having the LCD flip like this, I would have a similar feature. So in my mind, right, let me see if I can illustrate this correctly. I would have in my mind's eye the flip up system that you have here on the Alpha series, on the, man, I can't get out, on the A6100 series, or A64, 66, the 6000 series, the way that we have it now. But instead of having this screen flip up, I would use the same type of bracket to have it flip out. So the way that I have it kind of like working out in my mind is that, to me, on a full frame camera, I would prefer having the ability to flip the screen up 90, have it come down as close to 90 as possible downwards, so that you can have it like this. But instead of having the articulation actually go in to shoot portraits, I would have the entire hinge kind of flip out on one, sort of like, almost like opening up a book. So now, as soon as it's facing you, you still have the ability to articulate it either down or forward, because that functionality doesn't get lost, except you're taking the entire screen kind of on a third hinge and bringing it all the way around so that it faces you. And if it's like that off of a metal hinge and not the articulation put on a single point, that is a much better version of the front facing LCD than what we're seeing right now with this flimsy little hinge. It's just an old school technology, and I think that's exactly what it is. So hopefully I was able to convey that correctly so that you can kind of understand the vision that I have. But I think that would be the best of both worlds when it comes to screens articulating, and I think Sony should get on it. I really do. Because here's another thing. If Sony were to come up with this new bracket design, then what would be hindering other companies? Because what most people don't know is that the articulating screen, fully articulating screen, is not even a Canon design. It's a Panasonic design. So Canon, as a company, actually pays Panasonic to have the rights to use that on their cameras. And Sony had to do the same thing just to appease all of the Canon users that were moving over to their system. And it sounds nuts, but there's a substantial amount of Canon users that are moving over to Sony that they actually, they caved and they put the flippy screen up for vlogging on it. Says, hey Lewis, how do you like the Rode mic? It's sounding great. Haven't been on in a couple of weeks and just noticed the change. I actually have to give it up to this camera. Not to the camera, to the microphone. It just sounds so good, right? It just does. I heard it over, like I started like tweaking it out comparative to my condenser, and it's because I'm in an untreated space that this sounds so much better. Like I have pretty much nothing on, but right now I know that there's nothing else besides my voice coming through, and it sounds good. Like it's got a pretty flat like diagram when it comes to like the pickup pattern. When it comes to what it actually is receiving, it doesn't change my voice too much, and it sounds really good. Like I was really surprised on how good it sounds, like straight out of the box. And I was like, it wasn't easy. When it came to the settings of how I had it, I just had to basically take the noise gate and really like bring it down to kind of like to nothing. And once, because it was being like over aggressive because of the high sensitivity of the condenser mic that I was using prior. And once I did that and I gain staged the microphone correctly, this thing has just been a rock star. And I totally, like, you have to give it up for a dynamic microphone. Like, I do like condensers, but this sounds really good. And not only do you think so, I think so, and a lot of everyone else here has agreed on that. For like 3 weeks, I've had it now, thanks to Sammy Superstar. He really helped me out, and he gifted me this microphone when we met up at the People of Video conference. So really taken back and really grateful. It was super cool to meet Sammy too. So I just hit the like. Yeah, you know what? There's so many times that I go into people's stream that I love, and like love their content so much, and then I'm like an hour into it, and I look and I'm like, oh man, I forgot, because you're kind of like excited to be there that you forget to do like the subtle things that you want to do for fellow content creators. Because as a casual viewer, these things kind of just like go under the bridge. But when you actually start making content on this platform, you really have respect for anyone who's ever done it. Like you really you recognize the effort and how hard it is to actually do this. And so you appreciate anyone who actually puts themselves out there to do it themselves. It says, story about my loss. Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if you knew, but yeah. He actually passed away when I was in Albany. The last day of the People of Video conference. So while I was up there, it's unfortunate, but he doesn't have to suffer anymore. I also wanted to kind of be over, still dealing with some stuff, on the back end, which makes it harder for you to just kind of like grieve the way that you would want to, but thank you. I appreciate your sentiments, sir. Jim is here. How you doing, sir? Sammy Superstar, you're feeling better? Oh, that's true. That's true. You weren't feeling too good, so let us know, Sammy. The price is fantastic, and it was a big surprise. It was a big surprise with the price, because to get all of the things that you're getting, like, hold on. Let me see. I just made some notes here. Just been rambling on. 45 megapixels right off the bat. That's actually pretty impressive for the fact that you're shooting at such high frame rates. So 45 megapixels, 20 frames a second. Like I said, it's not like I believe it's uncompressed RAW, which is what makes it so impressive. Now, Sony's Sony Alpha 1 shoots 30 frames a second in 50 megapixels. Asterisk, it is a compressed RAW. Now, haven't used the files myself to see if there's any really big difference between the compressed and uncompressed. I shoot the Sony Alpha 7 R2, and that one gives me a 42.2 megapixel file. I also shoot it in uncompressed RAW. They actually come out being like 90 megs, close to 100 megs per file. They are pretty chunky, but they give me all the lateral movement that I want with the image itself and the colors. Alright, so we got some notifications coming through here. Oh, thanks, Gil. It looks like Gil just mentioned me in his Instagram stories. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you for sharing that out, man. For my hands, Nikon has the best setup. Just makes sense where the buttons are. Yeah, like I have no problems with it. Now, there is something about Nikon that I would tell you right off the bat. Like, I don't think that the way that you're required to adjust settings on particular cameras is always the best, because of the way that they built their operating system. So their operating system, especially on the older cameras, bit more limited, and you have to kind of double press certain buttons so that you can like change certain aspects when it comes to aperture or ISO. I think was one of the biggest things that unless you had it particularly dialed in prior with the white balance, that the ISO could really like come to like bite you in the butt with the Nikon cameras. Now, I also haven't used any of the mirrorless new lines to see if that's something that they changed, but I do agree with you when it comes to the ergonomics. Even the buttons on the left side, like the buttons on the left side of this on the LCDs, like we used to have on D800s and stuff like that, like those buttons made so much sense where they were at there. So just depending on the iteration of the camera that you have, depends on how that works out. But let's just say that, like, let's hope that these newer cameras are pretty much set up correctly. Now, once again, we'll see how they adapt. But now that Nikon has this camera, their next step, like, undoubtedly has to be stepping up their glass now. Now it's like they have good lenses, but they need to make faster lenses to keep up with their new camera. And everyone has to do it. Look, Sony came out with their new Alpha 1, and they're revamping their 70 to 200, and I believe they're going to be revamping, what's the other one? Quite a few lenses that need to be revamped. I believe like the 90mm macro, that one's really slow. The 85mm G Master probably needs to be retouched up, especially with these new like XD linear motors. And to have both of those lenses with the focus compensation mod is going to be out of this world. And I'm just going to touch on it once again because I forgot to mention it last week. The focus breathing compensation on the new Sony cameras is so revolutionary because a 50mm cinema lens, which is what you would need to use to actually eliminate what we call the focus breathing, is going to cost you way more than $2,000. Cinema lenses are stupid when it comes to the prices. So if you were to put into consideration that this camera is now going to give you cinema lens type quality from your actual like photography lenses, you could spend $2,000 on a lens, like on that 50mm f1.2. But if you're getting images out of the video of a $15,000 or $20,000 lens, at the end of the day, the footage, right, the final product is what matters. So Sony's latest technology is gonna heighten the quality of the lenses that you have already. That is next level. But once again, I digress. We're talking Nikon. Hey, Ken's in the house saying, hey, what's up? Aubrey's here as well. Hey, buddy, how are you doing? I'm doing good. How are you? I'm glad that you were able to stop by. That it just means the world to me. Aubrey, you're freaking awesome. All right, Samantha's here as well, saying hello to everyone and to myself as well. How are you? Thank you for stopping by. Oh, so look, we got the whole crowd in here. Mr. Spink is in the house. For all of you hive-minded people, if you haven't checked it out, Jared Spink has an amazing podcast. I don't know, did you put one out this past Monday? Because I don't think that I got a notification for it. But regardless, I also had the pleasure of being on that podcast, and that was such an amazing experience for me, being that I had heard so many episodes prior to being on it. So it was just a surreal experience for me. That's something that I will never forget. But thanks for stopping by, Jared. You're freaking the man. Moguls want their flip out screens. You got it, man. I made a video. I made a joke where I said, like, you know, they could be at a restaurant, right? And they'll be like, how would you like your steak? Medium well. I'll be like, what size would you like with that? A flip out screen. Canon owners will ask for flip out screens on a restaurant just because they're just so used to it. Oh, what's up, man? How you doing, Robert? Spoke Audio is here saying hello to me. Sony does need an articulating screen. I don't think so, man. Like, they have their... Because, look, this is the way that I was seeing it before, right? Everyone loved the Sony Alpha 3, right? And everybody's got such a good camera, but we can't see ourselves as far as vlogging goes. So Sony came out, and they came out with the Sony A7C. The C did take away some of the buttons, but It was basically the A7 III with a flip out screen for everyone who wanted to vlog. And then people still started complaining about it. Oh, the EVF isn't this and this and this and that. And I'm like, you guys literally said, give me this camera with a flip out screen and I'll be happy. They do it for you and you're still not happy. So then just like, what? I think Sony needs to just hunker down and go, like I said last week, in the motion that they did with their controller. People could criticize them for their PlayStation controller, and now that is like the basis for every gaming controller on the market. It is like just the basic design coming from Sony because they know how to deal with ergonomics, and their R&D is next level. All right, look who's here. Mulain. I said it incorrect last time, but I got it right. Mulain TV saying hello to Mr. Camera Junkie. That's me. Says he has this microphone. It's a really good mic, right? It's really has impressed me. Another thing that I've started to notice, because I mentioned it last week as well, was that it looks like me or my voice and Rode microphones match well together. Because even my Rode Video Micro on my cameras, they just always sounded great to me. Easy to like deal with the audio when I was, because I also make certain videos for my day business, which is the phone repair. So that's where I use that microphone more than anything, and it still sounded good. Rode is such a good company. All right, well, thanks for stopping by. Says he needs to go. Says happy Halloween to all. Caleb is in the house. What's up, man? How are you doing, sir? Congratulations on the 981. Remember your I remember your 700 sub live stream. Yeah, I remember my 100 sub live stream. Like, it wasn't too long ago, man. And that's why I just sit here and I'm just like amazed and grateful that there are almost 1,000 camera junkies in the crew. That's big ups to you guys, man. You guys are awesome. You guys make my weekend live streams like the event of my week. Like, no matter what happens, I just know that I'm able to like mark off on my calendar Saturday night, hang out with good people and have fun and talk cameras, which is my passion, Gil is saying Jared, because Gil was also on the Hive podcast. He's just a couple weeks ago. Also another great show. Really deserves a listen. If you're not privy to the Hive podcast, you're missing out. Go check it out. And whenever I find a podcast, what I do is I start listening from the first episode so that I feel like I've caught up. It's almost like if I catch a new series on TV, but it's in season 3, right? I will do everything in my power if I'm really interested in watching the series to start watching it from the beginning, because there's nothing worse than to start trying to figure out things in season 3 when you don't know where the story's going. So that's kind of what I do with everything, and I really do mean everything. So if I've subscribed to somebody's channel, 9 times out of 10 is like I've gone to your first videos and I've started from the get, and just start going through the plethora of your content, because it's kind of like the way that I consume it. It's not necessarily like that I'm like focused and watching, but I will go through your content and I will definitely listen, like while I work and things like that. It's just what I do. That's why I love podcasts so much, because the audio format allows you to get a lot of things done. Me being a single dad, everything that's required of me, but yet to have that playing in the background, still giving me great information, entertainment, and education at the bottom line, especially the Hive podcast. You always learn something. Robert says, I'm a muggle, I guess. Hey, there's people who prefer it, but I really think it's because they haven't even attempted to look somewhere else. So it is what it is. But here's another tidbit when we start talking about either flip up screens, flip out screens, or anything like that of the sort. The flip out screen, whether it's up or to the side, should only be used to reference, to guide. to let you know that you're still within the shot, kind of like the lines on the road. They're there to just guide you and keep you straight. It is not for you to be looking at it. So pro tip, don't look at the LCD, whether it's on top or on the side, because the connection that I have with you, my audience, is through this lens. So there might be some people that find that weird, but every single little avatar, so like let's say I click here and I see Gil's avatar, that's what I envision when I'm looking through that lens. And that's the conversation that I'm having with. I'm having it with you guys. That's why I'm not going to sit here and look at myself on the screen up here and pretend to have a conversation with myself. That to me is a little weird, or to the side. Because if I weren't to be looking at this lens itself and I would be looking at a screen that's here and saying, hey, what's up, guys? It's a little off-putting. And I know it is because I see it in videos all the time, So if I was looking up here and saying, hey, what's up, everyone? It is the same exact thing. It's just a little off-putting. Now, I do think that looking up is a little bit less than looking off to the side. That's neither here nor there. But whether you're using the side screen or the top LCD, what you should do is practice on looking at the lens. And if you can, once that you've looked at the screen and you're like, okay, I'm in the shot, I'm in the frame, within the white lines, I'm good, flip back the LCD and no longer utilize it. Try to learn how to use the camera without those like training wheels, so to speak, and learn how to look at the lens, and it's gonna allow you to be way more engaging with all of your videos, hands down. Can you give us a little preview of your topic for the 1000 sub live stream? That's actually pretty interesting, man. This is John. I really didn't know because I wasn't sure exactly when it was gonna happen. It looks like it might be happening next week, so I'm trying to plan it out because there are a couple of coinciding events that are seeming to happen around the same time, so I'm trying to figure this out. And this is kind of like the preview that I can give you. We're getting close to 1,000 subs, but we're also getting very close to week 52, meaning we are a month away from completing a year of this weekly live stream, which when I started my first live stream on December 1st last year, I would have never thought that this was what was going to come about. And that there's so many amazingly positive things that have come out of the Camera Junkie live streams on the Saturday nights that I would just be remiss to not be extremely grateful for all of the things that have happened within this year. I've been more than amazed. And that's kind of like my tough thing right now, because it looks like I'm going to hit 1,000 before the week 52. I was trying to see if they kind of hit and make like an extravaganza thing. But the one thing that I have yet to do on my live streams, which is this is for those of you who are here on the inside, what I'm planning to do is to actually invite some guests for the first time. So I haven't interviewed anyone or anything like that, but what I was thinking was I'm gonna try to reach out to the people who have been very important to me in this journey within the last year, and see if I can get them all to kind of just hang out with me on a live stream and bring everyone to the forefront. So that's what I had in mind. I'm not sure, because that's in all sincerity, that was kind of what I had in mind for week 52. So that's what I have in the works, so to speak. But it's just interesting to see what happens, because what happens for 1,000, I don't even know. I'm telling you, I'm just like everyone else here. I'm here along for the ride, right? I just do what I do and let the chips fall where they may, and we'll see. And what you can see is the enthusiasm in my smile. It's like, this is the best, right? At least I think so. I have way too much fun. I have two A7C and I love them. I don't understand why people hate them so much. Oh, I can understand you so much because, Gil, I'll tell you this one thing. The A7C disappointed me a little bit because the rumors that were coming around this camera was that it was the A6600 in full frame. And I was like, I'm done. I'm like, you give me a flip up screen in a small little package, and I was still thinking flip up, not flip out. It still hurts because if you were to give me a flip up LCD full frame, you didn't even have to put in-body image stabilization. I mentioned this over and over again. I'm like, I think they wasted space on the internal body trying to add the IBIS that was not necessary. For example, the A7 original, right? The Alpha 7, there was no in-body image stabilization. It was all optical stabilization. So no IBIS. You take something like that, 24 megapixels. I even said, give me 5 frames per second. It doesn't have to be fast. Anything like that. You jam pack that into an A6600 with the bigger battery, flip up screen. That would have been the camera. That's it. Game over. And yet, all of these Canon users, you Canonites, asking for flip out screens on the A7 III. And then the other thing that I think was like kind of like what pushed it over was that Sony also said, you know what, if we put a flip out screen, we can sell more microphones because we have that multi-interface hot shoe on the top. So as soon as they put the flip out screen on the A7C, the same that same release was when they released their latest microphone that gets attached to the top, which is like, I believe, like another $700 to $1,000 on a microphone. So now you add that to that setup and just throwing like money on top of each other. So it's like, okay, we'll give these people what they want, which is a flip out LCD, and we get to sell more microphones in this vlogging package. Done and done. Ship it out the door. And that's what has everyone with the A7C. My biggest thing, right? My biggest thing about the articulating flip out screen is that there's so many times where you just want a slight angle to get off of your LCD. But to do that with a fully articulating LCD off the side, it has to be fully open. Okay, let me see if I can explain. Okay, here's this camera, right? NEX6. If I want to just get a little bit of angle off of the LCD, like that, that's it. It's done. And I can sit here and have the perfect viewing angle and take my shots. If I want anything like that on a fully articulating screen, I have to open it up. Even if it's just to get that much articulation on it, right? And as soon as I open it, it takes this camera from being this small to making it this wide, because now I don't want to carry around a camera this wide. And that's just me, right? It's just me. But to get this, I don't want to make the camera this wide. That's what it comes down to. It's not that hard. You understand that it's just like, everyone's like, this is the best thing ever. I'm like, no, it's not. Because if I want that or this or little nudges, I have to like transform my entire camera to be like, and make it more vulnerable just because I want to articulate the screen this much. So, where I would actually articulate the screen on this camera, in that type of setup with the fully articulating screen, it kind of makes that camera to me kind of like a fixed LCD camera. And that's why I dislike it, because the fact that that is the only option that you have will allow me to say, you know what, I won't articulate the screen, I'll leave it plugged into the back, and it's like I'm using a Canon T2i with a fixed LCD. or an old school like that my Nikon 90D or D90, you know, like fixed LCD cameras that have no articulation, and that's the type of feeling that I get with a fully articulating screen. I think that was the best way that I was able to explain it. You know, we've talked about this subject so many times here. Hashtag Team Flip Up. But with that being said, that's what I said. I prefer this aspect, and the fact that I think that the best iteration that we got of it was with the A6100 series, the Alpha 6000 series. Yeah, that's just where I sit. Says that would be amazing. I think so too, right? Like I know what you're talking about. For those, he's saying an A6600 fixed full frame sensor. Boom. Just that. Just have it's so compact. And the fact that even though like I were to take my microphone and put it on top, when I put it to the left and I flip up the LCD screen, my camera might get a little bit taller, right? And it's always going to get taller because you're going to add the microphone, right? Whether the screen flips out to the side or to the top. But the fact that my A6100 is able to stay this thick, and I'm able to switch hands with it and not have to worry about that I'm breaking the screen while still having the fully articulating, while still having the microphone, to me, it is the best version of a vlogging camera that we have available now. And that's just me. And I do agree with you. I think that would be amazing. That's why I mentioned it. I was so excited, Gil. I can't even tell you, man. I was so excited. I was like, look, I don't even have the money, and I'm going to make the money for this camera because you giving me an A6600, and I said call it A6700, A6800. I don't care. Give it whatever. Give it a whole new series, the A7000 series. Name it whatever you want to name it. Full frame in a 6600 body. Boom. Game changer. And like I said, nothing that I'm taking away from the A7C. I do like the two-tone silver and black, but I also think that would have been an awesome camera. Says me too. Great cameras. Say, yep. I want the Pro HDR display. Ooh. Gil says it makes sense, Lewis. You know what? Talking about that, going back to this Pro HDR display. Talking gear and tech. Something that crossed my mind that I was like, oh my God, this could actually be a game changer. Okay? Listen to what I'm about to tell you. Okay, check this out. Sony has just released a new Xperia Pro 1 smartphone. And this new Sony smartphone has HDR display, has like the latest and greatest in Sony eye autofocus, and the biggest selling feature is that it has a camera with a full 1-inch sensor, the same sensor that you would find on the RX series and also the ZV series, the ZV1. That same sensor that you're getting off of that camera built into a smartphone. Now, the phone itself, even through Sony, is not even being categorized as a smartphone. It's an Android smartphone, but it's not being considered that. It is being considered a camera, and the model number is being is indicative of that. So it's basically like a smartphone camera, but camera first when it comes to the model and I guess the registration through the company. That is one thing, right? Which is pretty amazing. They're talking about all the features that it has, and it even has an aperture mechanism that allows it to go from f2 to f4 to trying to bring some more sharpness into the images that you get from this camera. Now, I bring this up so that I can explain that with this camera smartphone that Sony has released, they also released a vlogging kit with it. Now, this vlogging kit is a small little handheld tripod It also has a like camera or smartphone clamp to put on there so that you could attach the phone. It has a cold shoe so you can add a microphone to it. And the big part of this vlogging kit for this smartphone camera contraption that Sony has come up with is a like 3-inch LCD that is like, I believe, an HDR display as well. It gets attached with a magnet to the front of or to the back side of your smartphone, so that you're not using the front facing less quality camera to vlog. So how the big 1-inch sensor camera is on the back of this said phone. So imagine here on the back we have this big sensor, but the LCD that you used to see is on the side in the front, right? What they did is they literally made an LCD 3-inch that gets attached here to the back of said phone to allow you to display what you're seeing, and it gets connected via USB-C. USB-C to USB-C. And as soon as you connect it to the smartphone camera, you're now able to see yourself in selfie style, so that you have a vlogging kit where you have a full-size LCD on the front to watch yourself and make sure that you're in frame, so on and so forth. The idea, the brainwave that I got coming in there was, what is stopping anyone from buying that Sony branded LCD and connecting it to the Alpha 1, their flagship camera? Nothing. So now you telling me that I can take a magnetized, okay, so let's just say here, this is the camera cage for my full frame camera. So I have my full frame camera here, and now I have it on a cage, and I have the ability to attach a little metal plate here that I can magnetize a full size like LCD that gets plugged in via USB, so that I can see myself on my Sony Alpha 1 and vlog. That's such a game changer. And I know that I guess I'm the only person right now who would even put those two things together, but that itself is such a game changer. That is a micro monitor that's connected via and powered by USB-C, and all of their new cameras, the A7 IV, the A7S III, and the Alpha 1 have USB-C. Their new, that also has an articulating screen, but the ZV-E10 and the ZV-1 all have USB-C, and this is something that we know we're going to continue to get on Sony cameras. That little LCD could be such an amazing investment, not only for right now, but for whatever future Sony camera could come out with, from here on out. Because, for instance, this cage is a little bigger than the traditional, because it could accommodate pretty much any Sony camera. So I can put the Sony A7 III, I can put the Sony A7C, I can put my A7R2. Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's good to know. I just got an information telling me that Ecamm said that I'm finishing up. Oh, I just realized something here. I'm just talking to myself. Let's see. Let's unlock this scene. I just realized that my video is not looping. And for some reason, it's not looping. Okay, we'll see if it continues to loop, but if not, we'll continue. But going back to it, Ecamm just told me that my hard drive was full, so it stopped the recording. That's what paused me. But going back to this frame right here literally fits any future generation. So if I were to get this new Sony Alpha 1 in my hands, I'm able to throw it in here and use it to maximize it without having to wait to go buy the latest and greatest cage specifically designed for it. I got this so that I could actually use it with whichever Sony series camera I decide to use. But with that being said, if I were to take said LCD, which is Imagine something like this, magnetize it here. The best part about magnetizing said LCD to the front is that all of the ports that you would need to utilize here will never be obstructed and literally are behind the LCD. So anything that you would complain about said articulating screen on the side, that it blocks the cable, so on and so forth, which is stuff that you never ever have to deal with when you have a flip up screen. With that being said, I digress. Having a modular system like this is, like, to me, better than trying to monitor yourself with an Atomos Ninja or anything like that. You know, like, having the ability to take this, and Lord knows if you would be able to use it for more than just Sony cameras. Just if you're able to get an image out of any USB-C, that's a game changer on its own by itself. You know, the fact that you can literally make any camera now a front-facing camera without having to add like an Atomos Ninja, you know, contraption that's bigger than your camera itself, makes a huge difference, I think, to me. But that's the way that I kind of conceive these things in my mind, and that's how I would use it. EVF or rangefinder on the A7C? That's a good question. Why is this behind it now? Okay, this eCam is getting a little wonky on me right now. All right. EVF or rangefinder? Well, rangefinder, I would actually do EVF, because for me, in the way that I like to see exactly what we're getting. So that's one of the things that I love of mirrorless cameras, right? As what you see through the EVF is what you're gonna get. If the exposure and what's in the image is correct, you're just literally just like copying that. So I have to say that I do like the rangefinder style cameras. So bringing it back, this is an EVF camera, right? Electronic viewfinder, but having the EVF itself over here on the upper left hand corner, bringing it all the way like such, this is what you would consider a rangefinder style camera. So the style itself, the compactness, the location of the EVF, and the way that it looks and everything like that, this is what you would call a rangefinder. I love this. That's why I think I love the A6000 series. But it does not take me away from something like this, which is my Sony A7R2, which is a full frame, you know, Minolta style, old school film looking camera. Absolutely love it. You know, like it looks like the ones that I have up here. You know, like my Zenit, it's got the traditional bump. It just looks great. And the images that I'm able to get out of this, phenomenal. Okay, so let's see. I purchased this year Rode Wireless Go 2 and the Sony ZV-1. I'm done buying anything for the rest of the year. That's a great combination, dude. I'm looking into the Go 2s. You know, having two microphones, transmitter, they can do individual recording, so you can have an original plus a backup. So many options. I think that's like one of the big things for me, right? I like having options and the ability to mold a lot of these devices to the best way that I would use them is always one of the things that attracts me to technology. How can I use it? You know? I used my iPhone cell phone and had two focus squares around their faces at the same time before I took the picture. Well, iPhone is really good when it comes to computation, like, but the way that iPhone does it is like it's literally taking two pictures of both faces. So even though to you, you're seeing on your camera like, oh, it's locking onto two faces, it's actively taking like around 600 photos within a second. And that's why iPhones are able to expose for the sky and for the ground in your face and everything, because it's literally taking like 600 micro photos and taking one to expose for the sky correctly and one to expose for the foreground correctly and one to expose for your face correctly, and then out of all of those pictures they merge them all in together to give you one good presentable image, which is what photographers would call either like focus stacking in some type of that sense, but it's all done within nanoseconds of you clicking the button and just it taking the shot and then producing to you a reproduction of like around 600 photographs taken within that second. That's why it's able to get pretty much everything in focus and get good high quality image. Says that's an interesting idea. I don't know which one you're talking about, but I appreciate it. That phone you're talking about is about $1,700 USD, not including the vlogger kit. That is another thing, yes. But honestly, I think that's why Sony might have classified it as a camera instead of a phone. You know, because it's easier for you to say, hey, I'm spending $1,800 on an APS-C camera than it is saying, hey, I'm going to be spending $1,800 or even over $2,000 with the vlogger kit on a phone. You know, even right now, you can buy, depending on the exact iPhone that you're going to get, the exact model, but you can get 2 iPhones for the price of that one Sony camera phone. And the other thing is that it's still Android. The only thing is, like, Android is really not the worst, right? But Android still, in my eye, hasn't beat out Sony when it comes to battery life. Now, I've heard good things about the Pixel 6 and it being the best battery, but for my use case, like, no Samsung or anything like that has ever been able to keep up with my workflow as far as what I use my phones for. That's why I've been on iPhone advocate for a while. Aaron says, would it be a mistake to spend $6,000 on an Apple display? It's 2 years old. Okay, let me read this correctly. Would it be a mistake to spend $6,000 on an Apple display? It's 2 years old. I would think so. Yeah. If you're buying a 2-year-old display, I don't know if it's new or used. But I think $6,000 is going to get you the newest Apple display, the one that they just came out with not too long ago. So if you're looking to spend that type of money, I would spend it on the newest iteration of their display. I believe it's a 5.7K, and that's from Apple. But there are so many alternatives to the, to the displays that I wouldn't even recommend spending $6,000 on them. You can get so many different types of displays, like curved 49-inch ultra wides, really HDR screens that will help you out if you're doing like more photography. I know you're more into music, so I would say you're dealing more with like editing platforms, I guess, or listening to your music in a linear timeline. So I would say a wider screen is probably better for you than a like high definition like display that you're paying for all the extra color corrections in it that would be more used for like film editing or photo editing, and spending all the money for the color display to be accurate comparative to like the actual size. So it really depends on what you're going to use it for, but I think that's a pretty hefty price tag for a monitor, especially when it's a monitor only. You might even be able to get a TV that does the same thing for a lot cheaper. Those new LG OLEDs, they are ridiculous. And you could definitely get it for a lot less than $6,000. I have an iPhone XS Max with the new iOS, and yes, the new LCD on the A7R3A or the 4A would flip up like the A6000 series. Yeah, that's why I still like it. Like, I'll tell you another thing. The fact that Sony, right, and hear me out, The fact that Sony did not put a fully articulating flip out screen on their Sony Alpha 1 made me so happy. I was like, just yes. You still want to, do your flagship, but your flagship is a photography camera and you gave it a photographer's LCD. Thank you. And that's it. So my dream camera as of right now is the Alpha 1, right? Love to get my hands on that beast. And for instance, if I were to use the Sony Alpha 1 for video, I'm most likely going to use it on eCam, which will give me the display that I want to see here on my computer. I can monitor out, or worst case scenario, if I'm in the market for a Sony Alpha 1, meaning if I have $6,500 for the camera, not including a lens that will match well with it, I don't think I'd be hesitating to spend whatever extra money on that little vlogger kit just to see if I can get a 3-inch articulating LCD screen on that flagship. That would just be killer. Plus, the Rode Wireless Go 2 now has a mobile app. Oh, that's right. Doc had mentioned that you're able to download everything. I believe he had to use it on his iPad, but still it works. Hey, Kippy's in the house saying, hey, Lewis and everyone, just tuned in. Been recovering from a wedding shoot. Well, I hope it went well, but I do understand the recovering thing. 14 hours on a wedding shoot? People don't even realize how much time gets spent on an event like that. Randall says, $1,800 phone, camera, internet browser, and garage opener all in one package. I'll buy. Listen, $1,800 for an Android phone? That's something else. Yeah, I mean, the tech is 2 years old. Okay, so the tech is 2 years old. Yeah, I would still think that you can get much newer tech, but it just depends on what you're going to use it for. Are you going to use it for computer-based things? I'm guessing because it's a monitor, or would you be better off with an entertainment-based television that then also could be your monitor? For everyone to know, I do not use computer monitors. I have two high definition 120 hertz televisions, and they are old school, right? I would love to upgrade them, but as of right now, they're okay for what I need them to do, because when it comes to color corrections and things like that, I'm not doing them on these monitors. Just not. But when it comes to the display and what I need to, they're super convenient, because on top of PC connections that I have for them, so if I needed to connect my Windows PC or any other computer, I have a port on each one to do so. I also have 2 HDMI ports to each monitor, so my Mac Mini is feeding a signal to each one of these monitors or televisions into its first port, and then I have a secondary to the secondary HDMI, which I actually have pretty interesting configuration where I have my Windows machine here connected to my main monitor, and then I have my photography editing laptop here connected to the second port monitor over here. So whenever I need a secondary display on my laptop, I have this monitor where I can switch over to HDMI 2 and then get that feed. And then whenever, which is basically never, but the few times that I've been able to relax and I try to play some video games, I have a setup where I try to go on Twitch to play said video games, because FYI, I feel like I have so much to do, right? That for me to sit down and try to relax and try to play a video game, I have to kind of make it multifunctional, so to speak, or multi-purposed, because it's not like I can just sit here and be like, I'm gonna play a video game for an hour, because in all sincerity, that's gonna eat away at me. I'm gonna feel like I could have done so much more with an hour than play a video game. right? That's not gonna really produce anything. So for me to even get myself up and amped to try to relax and play a video game that I enjoyed like my whole life, I have to kind of double task it and just be like on Twitch as well, so that I can say like maybe there's a possibility of something spontaneously good happening through a Twitch stream, because you never know. So, I could be doing photography, but what happens if people really like my character while I'm playing Final Fantasy, which is exactly what I was doing. So, just giving that possibility is the only way that it will allow me to actually give myself the opportunity to play a video game, if that makes sense, right? Because at least I feel like I'm still producing something and showing some type of effort, even though the effort that I'm putting in is trying to relax and play my favorite video game. So it sounds weird, but that's the truth of it, because I feel like I should be working instead of playing a video game, even though I know for a fact that downtime is very important as well, even though I don't give myself a lot of it. So with that being said, my Twitch stream has 2 HDMI cables coming out of my main PC. So what I actually do is that I actually set up my Mac Mini to my secondary monitor, and then my first monitor will actually be displaying the game that I'm playing on this machine. The secondary HDMI port from the same Windows PC is coming out of it, and like dual image, so the same image that I'm seeing on my monitor here is also going into a capture card that's being thrown into my Mac Mini, which actually is this capture card. So this capture card that I have for this secondary monitor here, I disconnect this camera and I would then connect my computer. So what I end up doing is that I use my Mac Mini to run my Twitch stream, and it's running it out to Twitch. It still has my main camera, which is on me, so that I'm on display while I'm playing the video game. It's all being controlled through my Mac Mini, so I have no problems with the stream. And the secondary display, which would be traditionally my second camera here, is actually my gameplay. So then I end up putting myself in a bubble towards the bottom, put the gameplay as my main, and that's what's being pumped out to Twitch. The convenience of it is that even though that's the signal and the whole thing that is being displayed on Twitch, I'm still able to see my video game in full high definition glory in front of me. So it's not like I'm seeing a watered down version of the display in terms of like having what is traditionally called the video capture card, meaning let's say the video game is being displayed from my computer here. Those other types of capture card will have you first run the video feed to the capture card, so that then the Mac Mini can then get it and use it for Twitch, and then at the same time then use the secondary signal, pull it back out and display it to my screen so that I can actually play said game. I have it totally different, where I just have my high powered video cards giving me two of the same images, one directly for me to play, the other one is so that it can be sent out through Twitch, and I have my secondary display here showing all the overlays in the display and controlling the entire stream. It makes it super easy for me, so I broke that down for those of you who might be interested in doing something like that for yourselves. But I still don't play as much as I should, just because I should relax more, but I don't. I have found a bright 5K display that is 27 to 32 inch. Okay, that's what Aaron says. That's actually really good. I would tell you, it says that is 27 through 32 inches. If you have the choice, it depends on what you're using it for. I would ask you like what it is that you're using for. Like for me, my TVs here, they're 26 inches. I didn't want to go bigger than that. I think 27-inch is the max, depending on how close you have your screens to you. So the fact that I can touch my screens here, I didn't want them to be overly big. 32 inches right here would be way too big. It will have, just because of the proximity of me to the screen, it will have too much information, meaning that if I look at the screen here, whether you believe it or not, I can see everything on this screen in one shot. So I'm just looking at it and I can see from corner to corner. So anything that comes across the screen, I can see it and I'll be good. When you get into the bigger types of resolutions, if you're concentrating on this section here, whatever's going on this part of the screen it's lost. It's almost like you're working in an IMAX theater, you know, like you can't concentrate on the entire screen because it's just too much real estate too close to you. So if the screen is more recessed, right, like let's say you have 4 or 5 feet, then because of its shrinking in size, you can go into a bigger 32 inch so that you can keep it relative to, you know, the amount of information that you can feed yourself. But that's why I said when it's close like this, and if it's a monitor, I would never go past 27 inches. That's just, it should be a rule, just depending on how close. If you want to go bigger, you need to recess it and you need to get it away from your face, because if not, it's just going to be sensory overload. It says, no, always wait until you can afford it. Absolutely, when it comes to anything, right? TV, good point. It is a good point. Like, it's what I use, and most people fall asleep on it. Yet a lot of like the refresh rates and the things that they want and the highest, like, it's all being pumped through HDMI, and the latest and greatest TVs are like designed for it. So, you know, I believe an 8K TV is gonna come out like less expensive than an 8K monitor. You know, there's different aspects, but like I said, it just depends. So if it is that you're gonna use it as far as like a multi-entertainment system, like you want to have your computer but also be able to send, like, let's say you're watching a YouTube video and send that off to like a secondary feed that is a television, then yeah, I would definitely recommend it, because you don't need the color grading aspects that you would need, of like the color corrections off of a high definition HDR monitor to watch entertainment. You know, in that aspect, you could just let the TV do the work. Migs. Welcome, Migs. I'm not sure if you've been here before. The name seems familiar, but if not, if it's your first time, thank you for stopping by. He says, I'm impressed with the Nikon's Z9 release. So am I, man. There's so many features. I haven't gotten into it. 120 frames in Jpeg is stupid. It's just stupid. Like, you're going to get, like, it's going to be 120 frames movie. So let's say you're shooting sports. I believe Jared Poland mentioned this as well. You can go to like a baseball game, right? And as the guy is batting, you can record the whole things in JPEG stills, to the point where you can just scroll until you get the exact moment where the ball hits the bat, and you get that like compression effect right there, which is like, you nailed the shot. Yeah, because you have 120 frames within a second. There's no way that you could miss that shot. So that's why I said it's super impressive. What impresses me more than any of those features is that they nailed the autofocus. They got the autofocus right, man. And because they got the autofocus right, this camera is gonna do well. There's just no way. It's not the most expensive camera on the market. It definitely competes with what is on the market, whether it's megapixels, frames per second, the whole nine. Is gonna unlimited video, 8K video. I'm not sure if that's unlimited, but still 8K at 60, 4K at 120, obviously, because if you can shoot 120 frames in stills, you should be able to shoot 120 frames in video easy. What I want to see is things that haven't been shown up, but effectively, right? If you're able to shoot 120 frames, the rolling shutter shouldn't really be an issue. You know, when it comes to video, they also took off the time limits for the shooting the video, so you can record past 30 minutes, well past an hour. We still don't know exactly what we're dealing with as far as overheating and what we can max it out, but it's got a big enough body that I believe the heat dissipation should be fine. Nikon put a really good foot forward. There's not, like, really to this point, there's nothing that I can say negative about this camera. You know? Really, there's nothing negative that I can say. The one thing is that people are saying, like oh, this is a good size camera. That's, the size of the camera is just really subjective, right? Because there's so many people who are like, oh, I really need a big heavy camera. And okay, so let me say this correctly, because I don't want to butcher it and I want to get it out across correctly. Okay, I've seen content creators on this platform complain that said mirrorless cameras, for example, that this Sony, let me take this off. I've heard a lot of content creators say that this Sony camera is too small and that it's too light and that I can't use it with my big heavy birding lenses because it's too light and I need a heavier body to compensate for my heavy lens, which to me never made any sense. I'm like, that makes no sense, right? If you have a heavy lens, why would you want to add a heavy body to it? That makes no sense. I'm like, if you're telling me if I have a heavy lens and I have to have this big hunk of glass so that I can shoot at 800 millimeters, so that I can shoot an eagle from the top of the cliffs or whatever, right? If that's what I'm into and that's what I'm doing, why do I feel like I need to have a big DSLR heavy body to match so that now I have like two heavy things? I would much rather want a big lens and then give me a tiny little body that maybe doesn't even feel like anything's at all, so that I can control the lens better and still get the same type of images. So with that being said, right, that I don't agree with heavy lens, heavy body, because that to me is stupid, but I digress. It's something that I've heard from a lot of people saying, oh, I got heavy lenses, so I need a heavy body. Great. A lot of these people are Canon users. Just throwing that out there. And those same people who needed the heavy body with the heavy lenses were up in arms in praise for the new R3, because it's a big body, but it's 70% lighter than the other one. And now that it's lighter, I can use my big lenses and birding. And I'm like, weren't you the one who just said that you wanted the heavier body for the heavy lens? And now Canon comes out and creates the same sized body, but 70% lighter, and you're giving them all the praises. Still heavier than these. Kidding me? Come on, man. So that's why I just say, like, I find it funny. Sometimes they're just nitpicking to nitpick, right? But when it comes down to it, a lighter kit is always going to be more convenient, no matter what, because it's going to be easier to carry around. And if I can get the results from a lighter kit, I'm going to do that. That's why, in all sincerity, yeah, I have this camera. I have A6100s. But going back to it, this little guy right here, this NEX6, is so small and light. And with this 20mm pancake lens, 2.8, this thing is minuscule. This is also a full metal magnesium alloy body. I paid $100 for this camera with the kit lens. Surprising, has an amazing viewfinder. So even though it's the rangefinder, the pixel density, right, and the image that you get out of this older viewfinder is way better than you find on the A6000, A6100, and even the A6400, I believe. So with that being said, this has been kind of my go-to because it is so small and convenient. So with that being said, this has been the guy that I just grab the most. Like, boom, I'm just gonna grab this, take it in the car, just to have a camera in my hand, just in case. And this is my just in case camera. So it's so light, easy to travel with. It's literally nothing. It's literally nothing. Like, hides behind an iPhone. Not. It's literally nothing. 16 megapixels because it's an older camera. And the 16 megapixels, I put in a 64 gigabyte memory card, and it gives me, what is it? Like 10,000 images plus. Yeah, so you could just put it to yourself. The fact that I can shoot over 10,000 images without changing like a memory card on an old little rangefinder style camera, that's kind of been my daily driver more than anything. I hope they can keep it up with the demands for this camera and not wait for it for 6 months. That is a very good observation, Randall, because I'll tell you the truth. Let's just hope that Nikon doesn't, like, you know, screw the pooch in that aspect. Because now this is a completely different thing, because I just heard that, like, a lot of people bash on Apple and Apple products. But as a company, they announced these new MacBooks with all these amazing specs and say they're available for order right now, and like you can get them like next week, and people are getting these amazing machines within the week. Like, you got to give it up to Apple, man. Like, the fact that people are talking about chip shortages and like everything's hard to do, hard to get, hard to acquire, like everything, and yet they're still able to match the demand for the products. Like, it really is something other companies should take note, especially the way Apple does their things. Yep. Yeah, I installed it on my iPhone, and the Rode Wireless Go 2. That sounds cool, man. Like, that's gonna be a game changer. Does it have any overheating issues? Like I said, Kevin, this is all pre-production model. Nobody mentioned overheating as a problem as of right now, but it's also pre-production that if they did maybe come across with some of the problems, they really didn't mention it because they knew for a fact, like, not even the software was like, it's final. It doesn't overheat from anybody for the Z9, even being used in freezing temperatures. Randall might have seen some more information that I have. Like I said, I haven't seen anyone complain or mention anything about overheating, but we'll all see exactly what happens when the production unit hits. Now, this is the one thing. I haven't heard exactly when it's supposed to be released, like, for delivery or like even to be ordered, because everything that I saw was pre-production. So I agree, put the tiny body on the back and have one heavy thing to carry. Exactly. Like, if you already have to carry a huge lens, right? Okay, for example, here's a great example. This is my secret lens, right? This is my 135 to 400 millimeter, and this is the secret. Ready for it? Oh yeah, that's a Canon mount, baby. So what do? I use this adapter, my Metabones. So now I attach this to it. Oh, there we go. And now it's even heavier. This thing weighs a ton. This thing's a tank. So now that you're telling me that I have, like, to get these focal lengths, I have to use this tank. Would I rather put this that's even heavier or this? So then I take this little piece of junk and throw throw it on top of here, it doesn't even look like it belongs. I would much rather go birding with this than something that weighs twice as much and now has both of my arms lagging. Man, I'll tell you the truth, I could work out with this thing. This thing is putting pressure on my arm right now. I'm like, man, this thing it really is heavy. Now, the images that I get off of it, oh, gorgeous. Look at that. I have some photos on my Instagram of my brother. The last ones that I was able to take of him. And when I used this lens on that photo shoot, everyone went right back to him and was like, yo, these photos, they look like you're in a movie. You look like you're on a movie set. What's going on? Where are you? I loved it because it really just had more to do with my photography skills, than anything else. So when I started hearing the high praises, it just made my day. But yeah, that's one of my secret weapons. The cool part about it is that with this Metabones adapter, and this is just FYI, this Metabones adapter is kind of like perfectly matched with this camera body. So putting these two together, this Metabones with this, pretty much effectively, it gives autofocus to any Canon lens that I'm able to use. So with that being said, I'm using this 100 to 400 Canon with autofocus on my Sony cameras. Man, that thing's heavy. Okay, wear special glasses and use the lenses using Wi-Fi to a laptop or connect to the camera. Not sure exactly what we're talking about there. I love my Z1 because it is like that for me. Yeah, small, light, and easy to use. Dude, it just makes such a difference. That's why I'm like, and this is the whole thing. Anyone who's complaining like, oh my god, this grip here is so small. I can't fit my fingers around this small grip. I'm like, let me show you. One finger on the grip. And guess what? This camera is so light, it doesn't even hurt. This is weightless. So anyone complaining about the grip, it's like I can literally put my finger right here, and that's it. I can prop up this entire camera with a finger because it's light. That's the point. I think those new laptops have been sitting for a while ready to go. No, sir. It's too many iterations. Like, what I do see is like they were stockpiling them, but not. I think that they knew their limit. I think that's how Apple works more than anything. I think, like, let's say they're saying, like, we know at minimum we're going to get like 60,000 orders, like, on the first day. Before we announce this, we need to at least have that in the stock ready to go. And that's where I think, like, and if they had 70,000 units while they're still making more, it was like, okay, hit the green light and let's go. I saw someone using the ZV-E10 with one of those 600mm lenses on it and looked absolutely nuts, but the shots were fire. Exactly. Like, what else? At the end of the day, nobody's going to ask you, like, unless they're another photographer, right? So, caveat, unless they're another photographer who's trying to reproduce what you produced, they're going to be the ones who are asking, like, what did you use? How did you do this? Or, like, what type of kit? Anyone else is just going to look at your photos and be like, that's a great shot. Oh my God, this is amazing. And that's actually, like, what I think is the sign of a photographer, right? When you get to become a good photographer is when you can show somebody an image and they just look at it and they don't, like, they could be a total novice to photography and they could just see it and go, this looks amazing. They can't tell you why it looks amazing. they can just tell you that the final product looks amazing. And when they see it with their eyes, they're like, wow, this looks next level. That's when you know. It says, I use the APS-C Z mount 50 to 250 millimeter lens on my full frame camera, and it looks fantastic. Well, that just has to do with the new technology. So the APS-C lens on a full frame camera is still going to give you an APS-C image. But if it's a high quality lens, whether it's APS-C or full frame, it's still going to be a high quality image. And I think that is the last comment. There's 8 of you guys still hanging out here, which I appreciate more than anything. But we are getting to that magical 2-hour time limit, so I am going to be calling it here. Thank you, everyone, all the camera junkies, as always, for hanging out with me in Club Camera Junkie. You guys really do make my weekends the special day of my week, so I can't thank you guys enough. 48 weeks, man. 48 weeks that we've been doing this, and today we went with the dark mode and a little bit Halloween. So next week we should be back to my regularly colorful programming. But as always, thank you once again. Your time is your most precious commodity, and I'm always highly appreciative that you're spending it here with me. Take care of yourselves, okay? Because we're going to be doing it all over again next week. Same Camera Junkie plays, same Camera Junkie channel, right here, 10:55 p.m. Eastern Time. Club Camera Junkie. We're going to see what we're going to be talking about next week. We might be talking about 1,000 subscribers. Maybe. We'll see how that works out, you know? But we might be talking about something completely different. Oh, I forgot to touch on this, but I do want to put this in because it has to do with all of the computer tech stuff, and maybe I'll touch into it a little bit more next week. There was an article that came out on Sony Alpha Rumors that said that a repair technician had gotten a Sony Alpha A7S3, okay, A7S3 camera in for repair. In the repair, he had to disassemble said sensor, and when he looked at the sensor and said photo sites and everything, he confirmed that the sensor on the A7S3 is capable of up to 48 megapixel files. Yet it is a 12 megapixel camera. Why? Because the sensor itself is not what determines megapixels. And I had mentioned this before, but this is even more confirmation. The processor, the brain of the camera, is what does the computation of whatever image you're being able to pull off of said sensor. So most likely what Sony did was they took a high readout sensor that could read out 48 megapixel files and said, hey, we know you can go 100 miles an hour, but we don't need that. We need you to just give us 25, but we need you to give me the best 25 miles an hour that you can get. Okay? And that's exactly what they did. So they took the readout. And that's why, because you have a high readout sensor, you're able to reuse that technology, right? And instead of using the speed to pump out 48 megapixels, you use it to pump out 12 megapixels, but up to 120 frames per second with full sensor readout, no pixel binning, no line skipping. That's what you're able to do because you're taking a higher technology and using it at a lower base as far as megapixels, and the megapixels all has to do with the process afterwards, not the sensor itself. So I'll leave that right there. We can fester on that for a week, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that because that's really it goes to show you is like that the processor on these machines has to do more with the production and what you're getting out of the camera than the sensor itself. So it's always been like a misnomer that people are like, oh, how many megapixels is the sensor? It's like, it's not actually the sensor, it's how much information you can read out of the sensor, because the photo sites that give you the colors and the light, there's never been like 50 million pixels on a sensor itself. It is just how many times that sensor can actually read the light that is being transmitted to it. So got nerdy on you guys real quick there, but once again, I'm gonna retract like a true Puerto Rican and say bye to everyone once again. Take care of yourselves, have a great week, you know, be safe, because we're gonna be doing it all over again next week, and we're gonna be talking about the megapixel myth, right? I think that's what it's gonna be about. So happy Halloween to everyone. Okay, take care of yourselves, have a great holiday, because we're gonna see you next week, same place, same time. Camera Junkie crew, thank you as always for hanging out, and I will see you next time. Take it easy.